I'm Jack Granlund. Welcome to CFO Online. Today's topic is going to be how to get a loan, how to work with your banker before you even need any money. If today's information is useful to you, hit the like button. If you own a small or medium-sized business, subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. There's an old saying that seems to go along that the only time you can get money from a banker is when you don't need it. And there's a certain amount of truth to that. I'm going to tell you a couple stories about a client that I had at one time in the past. Called me up one day and said, "Jack, I need some money next week." I said, "Okay, well that's tough ask, but we could probably do it. So you have information for me. Once you got some financial statements for the year?" And I said, "No, I haven't done any financial statements for probably 6-7 months." And I said, "Okay, that makes it a little tougher. How about tax returns? You got your tax returns ready?" "So I haven't done my tax returns for a couple of years." I said, "Okay, well, this is getting harder and harder. I'm not so sure that this is going to work out so well. But let's get together and we'll see what we can do to get that done." You can't expect to get something done quickly without all the foundation in place, without having had any kind of conversations with somebody in the past, without being able to have any of the information that you need ready. So what are some of the things that you can do to help you work with a banker before you need any money? So how do you go about maintaining a business relationship with your banker? Well, one of the easiest ways to be able to do that is to communicate with them on a regular basis when you're really not asking them for anything. One of the things that I like to do is I like to call and talk to them, at least once a month. Talk to them a little bit about what's going on in the business, get a feel for what they're interested in, because every person is going to be different. Some bankers like to know what the sales are. Some bankers like to know what your accounts receivable are. Some of them are going to like to know what the profits for the month are. Get to know what each one is interested in. Every banker is a little bit different. But what you're doing is you're communicating with them on a regular basis. The next thing I do is I like to send them a very short monthly memo, if you will. Probably less than half a page. That's going to take the 4 or 5 or 6 things that they're most interested in. Maybe it's going to be the sales. Maybe it's going to be the profits. Maybe it's going to be how are things compared to plan, whatever kind of plan that you had. So they're understanding that you're watching the business. Lastly, what I like to do in these little memos in each time is to highlight a few things that aren't going well, things that we're a little bit concerned about, and what we're doing to manage those things. So now what you end up with is your banker is getting regular communication from you, getting information that is interesting to them, talking to you about what you're doing, about the problems in the business and how you're managing it. And if you send it to them in writing, bankers never throw anything away. They'll have it in a file, they'll have it in their emails. Sooner or later, they'll shoot it along to their manager just to be able to say, "Hey, Jack's business is doing this. Here's some information I'm getting on a regular basis, just so you know." And then when you go to ask them for information, or when you go to ask them for a loan, they're going to be invested in you. They've been talking to you. They've been getting regular communications from you. They know what's going on in the business. They may have told their manager about it. Now all of a sudden, they're invested in your business, and they're ready and prepared. And most importantly, when you ask them for information, or you ask them for a loan, or ask them for money, it's not a surprise. The next thing I'm going to do with the information that I'm preparing for these bankers is to send it to some people that I'm not currently doing business with. I may have a banker that it's going to been doing business with for many, many years. And I'll send them information, but I'm also going to send that same information and that same analysis of what's going on in the business to 2 or 3 other people, prospects, if you will, who are going to be lenders to you or bankers for you in the future if there becomes a need for it. I'm going to tell you a story I had one time. Some years ago, I was working with a client that was a very successful business. Went from a smallish business to a much larger business, very, very profitable, lots of cash in the bank. You would think it would be a perfect client. And, so we had been communicating this to 2 or 3 different banks, as well as our main lender. And we came up for a loan renewal, and we wanted to increase our line of credit, partly because the business was going to be growing, and we wanted to make sure, even though we had a lot of money in the bank and we weren't using any of the line of credit, that we would have enough money for the next year. Inexplicably, this ended up just becoming a huge problem. For some reason or another, they couldn't quite understand why we would want to increase our line of credit. And this went on for 2 or 3 months. Never did come to an agreement on what we were going to do. So ultimately, we went to another lender, one of the people that we had been sending information to, so they were aware of the business, they knew what we were doing, they knew how we managed the business, so that when we had to go to them, it's sort of at the last minute, and they had to make a decision very quickly. They already had all the information, they'd been talking to us for over a year, and they knew what we were going to be doing. And they were comfortable with how we were running the business and what our plans were. And it worked out perfectly. Not for the first bank, because we ultimately ended up leaving there, but it worked out perfectly for the business because we never missed a stride in anything we needed to do, because we had planned for the possibility that someday we would have to move from one bank to another. Now, the next thing you need to do when you're working with the bank and when you're communicating with them when you don't need any money is to be talking to them about what information they need, what policies they have, what their rules are. Now, this may seem strange, but every bank is a little bit different. One bank may require certain kinds of information, another bank may require different kinds of information. And if you know that, you'll be able to tailor the information you are providing them to what is important to them, and you will know which banks to go and ask for which kinds of information. I'll give you an example. Banks have what are referred to as loan policies, and each bank is a little bit different, and the banks need to follow their loan policy. So if one bank's loan policy says we can only rely on your tax returns to determine how much money you're making, and you give them your mid-year financial statements showing them that you've made a whole lot more money than you did last year, they're going to look at that and say, great, when you have your tax returns for this year, let us know and we'll talk to you. Well, if you need a loan today, next month, a couple months from now, before you get your tax returns, well, you're in a tough spot. Another bank might come along and say, well, we don't need that. Our loan policy says we can take your interim financial statements, use those to be able to determine what we can do for you. So if all of a sudden you need money, much more money than you have in the past because your business is growing, that might be the bank that you have to go to. It's knowing those things that are an important characteristic of understanding how to work with a bank. The other thing you want to look at, and we're going to talk about this later in the next video, about specifically what kind of information to put together, but you're going to want to know from the banks, how many years of tax returns you want, what kind of financial statements do they want, are they going to want a personal financial statement from the owners of the business. If you know that type of information, then you can come to them prepared the next time you need to go to borrow money, the next time you need a new piece of equipment, the next time your accounts receivable are growing because the business is growing. You'll be ready and you'll be prepared. I hope this has been helpful for you. Why don't you leave in the comments some of the topics about what you've had problems with or ways that you have managed to interact with bankers. Let me know what's happened there. Let me know what you've been doing. In conclusion, we're going to talk about 3 things. What you're really looking for when you're talking to a banker is you want to be talking to them on a regular basis when you don't need money, so that they're engaged with your business. They understand what's going on. Secondly, they're going to have information about your business. They're going to know what's going on. They're going to be invested in it. And lastly, they're going to develop a rapport, a comfort level with your ability to manage the business. And when they are comfortable with that, they're going to be very open-minded about wanting to help you grow your business and manage the needs that you have for financing in the future. Thanks for watching our video today. If you like the content here, hit the like button. If you're a small or medium-sized business owner, subscribe to the channel. Thanks.